Hey everyone, welcome back to the Product Pivot. I'm Santi and I have my amazing co-host Megan with me. And today we are going to be chatting with someone I am a huge fan of. She's a light to the product community. Her name is Heidi. And just to do a quick recap of this podcast, we share all kinds of stories from different folks in the product community, product roles, and product management practice. So this season's full of really great guests with a variety of experiences. So without further ado, I'm going to flip it over to Heidi and she's going to give an introduction about herself.
Well, hey everyone, and it is so nice to be here with you today. I'm excited to be a part of this discussion. Thank you so much for having me. If I were to give a quick sort of overview of who I am and what I do, I work for a company called The Product Recruiter, and we help technology companies make really tough hiring decisions in areas like product, UX, and product marketing. We are based in Toronto, but we recruit really across North America in whatever locations our clients want to hire. I've been with the firm for too long to mention, but I lead the practice, which means that I spend all of my time working both with our clients, so CEOs, founders, and chief product officers who need to make tough hires, and then working with the larger market, so candidates all over North America at all different levels who are successful product people. That's what I would say I do.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of your work too. I just want to say
Mhm.
you are very, very active in the product community, always helping people, sharing lots of insights, and just really giving back and doing it very well. You definitely rock. You rock your role, for sure. You work on all kinds of roles and you have a lot of experience in this space. So, from your experience working, with tech startups or other companies, what are the most common skills you see in successful product management candidates?
Mhm. Well, I'm going to sort of peel that back a little bit before I answer the question directly, because it's, product management roles and personas of PMs are varied, and the role is very nuanced and complicated. If you were to have 10 different product managers at different stages of their career in a room, and you asked and sought to understand what is it that makes each one of them successful, it's possible and highly likely that you're going to have 10 different answers or a lot of different answers. And so I'm going to share with you from the lens of a recruiter, and a recruiter who works with a really diverse set of clients, most of whom are startup scale up, but some who are kind of notable success stories. And the role of a recruiter is to work on behalf of the client who has engaged them and who they consider to be successful, and the qualities that they feel are important and likely to be successful in their business. And so that's kind of a bit of a nuanced way of thinking about the successful product managers and who might be successful versus someone who isn't. Now, the answer is what do I consider a skill that is in one candidate more than another that makes them successful? First of all, success is the skill and the experience level that we look for in candidates. What does success broadly mean? Well, generally I look for a before and after narrative. Okay. So if we think about a product manager, what was the scenario? What was happening in the business and in the product when you were promoted to be its PM, or you were hired to be its PM? And where is it today? All right. And the ideal scenario is an up and to the right kind of a story, that it was, a small baby product, or it was wrought with friction and all kinds of challenges. But because of the incredible things that the individual has worked on and labored and achieved over a period of time, it's now over here. It's never had more monthly actives. It's never had, greater ARR. That kind of a narrative um, is what we would typically look for in a successful product candidate. Now, what's interesting about that is you'll notice I didn't talk about a defined skill, because whatever that journey is, based on the kind of product that it is and the stage of the business, the skills necessary to achieve quantifiable success can look different. So if you think about a B2B SaaS company with a sales-led motion versus a PLG self-serve product, maybe SMB focused or consumer focused, a lot of the skills and experiences might look very different, candidate to candidate. The other thing to think about when we think about an actual skill that stands out among successful product folks is the actual skill of communication and effective communication. Um, when we think about who is a hiring stakeholder likely to get excited about, no matter what their successes have been or how they do their job, if a candidate is unable to effectively communicate and storytell these things, it's really challenging for a stakeholder to get to realize this is the candidate we've been looking for, whether that stakeholder is a recruiter or an actual functional leader, hiring stakeholder in a company. Thoughts on how we're feeling about that?
No, I think that totally makes sense, because I was like feeling the storytelling skill, and then you like validated that by saying that as well, because I hear that all the time. And Santi, we've heard this on the podcast that storytelling is the key skill. Like you have to be able to tell a story with what you've done as a PM. And I would almost just like ask kind of like a follow-up question, if you feel this is comfortable to answer, is as a PM, how do you tell your story on a resume or a LinkedIn profile the way you tell it verbally? Because how do you get someone to look at it and understand your story the way you can when you're talking to them? Because I feel like that is hard. Does that make sense?
It is hard because it is very unnatural to be a candidate. In fact, nobody wants to be a candidate. Nobody wants to be a job seeker. Nobody wants to even, dance around passive engagement, because it is a tremendous commitment of time if you're a passive candidate, right? So when I think about storytelling and how that fits into whether you're an active or a passive candidate, it depends on the platform, first of all, in which you are trying to communicate. So if we think about communicating a narrative on LinkedIn, let's think about LinkedIn for a minute. What is LinkedIn if you're a candidate, whether passive or active? LinkedIn is part of your marketing tech stack. That's what it becomes. And everything that you are putting out there on LinkedIn is to try to capture top of funnel leads that will convert to a meeting. That is what you're trying to do. That is the point of view of LinkedIn. So it means that your LinkedIn profile is optimized to typically a recruiter or a talent acquisition person looking for someone like you. Well, what does that mean? Well, we have to then think about the story has to be boiled down to the most searchable things that persona is running in the back end, which is a clear, crisp, searchable title, clarity on where you are based, clear communication of what is that product that you are responsible for at your employer. Because if we think about, businesses, most are multi-product companies. There's you might have the API person, you might have the platform person, you might have the front end person, you might have all the things, the growth PM. Clearly communicating on LinkedIn using the most common language attached to your function, so that someone running a search on the back end is likely to have you pop up in their results. Okay. And then enough content about what you have done to help that persona looking for you to feel good that this person's actually accomplished something. They've achieved something. They have contributed to the growth of a business. Those are the most basic things that someone is looking for and expecting in storytelling on LinkedIn. If we shift to the next step of kind of your funnel, so to speak, if you're a candidate, then that's the resume, right? So now you've gotten engagement from someone searching for you. You've come up in the results. You're now sharing a resume with that persona. The resume needs to communicate your story in the language of product. And it needs to be hyper dialed in to guiding that user persona of the resume product through a journey that explains what you have achieved and how it added value to the business. Really important. And to do so in a curated way as possible with as few words as possible, because you're just guiding that person through that process to convert to what you want, which is a meeting. Yes, I want to meet this person because I can very quickly see that they're a product manager, they've delivered value. I understand what it is that they have been solving for. I understand and have connected the dots between the product they've been working on and the product that we will feel is aligned to the type of, what we have in our business and likelihood that they'll be successful because they've worked on a similar product. That's really what you're trying to connect. And engagement, which is the interview, which is the meeting, well, that's a whole other level of storytelling, which we will for sure get into in this podcast.
I feel like that was fire, Santi. I feel like that was
Yeah.
helpful. That was super helpful. What do you think?
Oh my goodness, yeah. Like I'm making clips on clips out of that. Like this will be getting repurposed into the
Yes.
community.
Awesome.
Yeah. There's so many, and I've heard this from job seekers as well. There's so many different points of views and thoughts and considerations. People don't know what to include, what they should be focusing on. And the way that you can tell that you've been working with product managers for a long time. The way that you just broke that down clearly and articulated what folks should be focusing on, that just adds so much clarity to the job seeker's job, which is finding a new role, or even people that might be passively looking and wanting to have something that they can tie back to and be like, all right, let me see if I'm checking off some of these like key foundational boxes. So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing that, because that was incredibly helpful to shed some light into what job seekers really should be looking at.
The other thing that I think should be mentioned, especially if the persona of a candidate is someone who is early in their career, okay, and still finding their swim legs on being a product person themselves, not to mention then the arduous task of navigating levels and into your next, other future roles, is the fact that there's often a common denominator to how less experienced candidates communicate in all of the channels, whether it's LinkedIn, a resume, or even an interview, is that a less experienced candidate is likely to want to spend a lot of time talking about the how. This is how I did this. And so they might use a lot of terms like they'll want to drop agile. They're talking about agile and their scrums or squads and their frameworks and their all the toolkits and all the how. On a resume, this would translate into they talk extensively about cross-functional teams and cross-functional collaboration with cross-functional matrix teams. If we think about the persona of a hiring stakeholder, yeah, they know that. Oh, of course, it's not just you. Of course, you're going to work cross-functionally. Let's assume that's a given. So let's instead talk about, so what did all of that cross-functional actually achieve for, yes, the product, but for the business. Okay. And that's a chasm that separates successful product managers who are successful and pretty good to that next level, that leveled up product manager who has figured out how to emphasize what a business person, a hiring stakeholder, cares about. Because that's the needle you're trying to move. You're trying to move a hiring stakeholder to align with you and say, bingo, this is the person we need.
That totally makes sense. I think that makes total sense because junior PM is not fully aware of like the business outcomes. And so I think that totally makes sense. That's how you stand out. That comes into our next question. Like, how do you stand out in the hiring process? And I think that is one thing that you can do to stand out. Santi, it seems like you want to say something.
Oh, I have so many things I want to say, ask, all of it. I'm going to tone it down because we only have so much time. But I just love that you did touch on that because at the end of the day, a PM, they have to think, yeah, there's the thing that we're working on right now, but how is this rolling up into the bigger initiative, the bigger strategy, the needle moving work that the company needs to do in order to achieve an outcome defined by, XYZ. That is such a good tidbit of information that I think anyone can really not forget, but they might focus sometimes too much on the execution because, yeah, we are in the weeds doing that work, no doubt. And it's good work that's needed. But we got to take that step back and look, how is this all rolling up into, like I said, that needle moving work that needs to be done? I love that you touched on that. And to Meg's questions, you touched on a little bit with one of our other questions. I think that's one way to stand out in the hiring process. And I'm curious, Heidi, are there any other ways that come to mind for you for ways that candidates can stand out in the hiring process, especially when competition is so thick?
Yes. So that's a really broad, incredibly broad question. I'm gonna kind of break it down in terms of, so this idea of standing out. You're a candidate. How do you stand out? We want to think about candidate mode. What does it mean to be in candidate mode? And how that helps a candidate, an individual, in their job search journey. So I actually want to begin with an idea that if you're someone who, so if you're a candidate and you're employed, so you're a passive individual, you're a passive candidate. Let's start there. Before you're even in the job market, full on, you're a passive candidate. The big question to ask yourself is, why? Why do I think I need to make a job change? And then explore where that leads you. Tech is an interesting category because there's so much excitement happening all the time in tech that it's easy to get caught up and swept up in innovation, new companies, people knocking on your door, inbound recruiters or employers asking if you're interested and available. That open to work button is only just one button press away, even on the back end, so that it's not public. There is this machine moving in the industry that can easily cause fear of missing out or cause us to evoke that question, maybe I should be taking interviews. Maybe I should be out there. Foundationally, we need to talk about what is the right time to make a move and when is it time to stay. The right time to make a move is when you are not running away from something, but you are moving towards something. And that's a really big difference because sometimes when things get hard, there's a new boss, there's, hey, your employer didn't raise that last round. So now they're actually on a cost-cutting journey and maybe you see your colleagues being exited and things feel really difficult and uncomfortable. Well, this is actually a natural part of business. And these events have been happening in business, in tech, since as long as I've been in it. And I've been in it for, I think now this is going to be year number 26 or 27. So we don't need to become afraid that these events are signals that it's time for you to move. Why is that? Because product managers are hired to do hard things and to solve big, hairy problems. And maybe that company that you work for needs you to do that for them in this season of challenge and difficulty. And so, moving towards something when the narrative that you have of your current employer and the job that you've done there is such that they hired me to do this and I have achieved all of those objectives, that's part of it. And the more comprehensive that journey is and that story will only separate you from the average candidate who is running away because it got hard. Okay, so really exploring why do you think it's time to go is a big part of it. Moving towards something does not necessarily mean that you're moving towards a promotion or a level up. It is that you are moving towards something that when you have completed that job, when you've completed that problem or realized that opportunity, that who you have become is the next level, that you are not the person you were joining. You have now grown and you have more tools in your toolkit. You have more experiences to draw from. Maybe you've worked on other industries or different problem sets, and that just continues to expand who you are and what you can do in the next opportunity after that. So it's not just about where you're moving to, it's about who will you be for the opportunity after that one. Okay? That's how I would start thinking about that question. What do you think? How are you receiving that?
Meg, I'll let you go ahead first. I've been talking a lot, but I just want to say, just TLDR, amazing.
Yeah, I think that was very insightful because I don't think a lot of people think about moving jobs that way. I think they think about, like, especially in tech. I know because I relate to this. I think that in tech, it's like more money, like who will pay me more?
Mhm.
And could I get a better job title?
Yeah.
And those are the two biggest things. I think for me in tech, I know because I job hopped for a long time because I'm a startup gal. And I know that with job hopping, better titles, more excitement, and better pay is always the thing with startups. And I think that just landed very heavily for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting that you bring that up because at some point in an interview process, someone is asking, so why did you decide to leave? And your answer cannot be for money or for title. Even if
For
it
sure.
was. Because people buy into and they want to feel that they can wrap their head around the narrative and that you built something and that you achieved the big thing you were hired to achieve. Because guess what? They're looking at you to hire you to either solve a problem or to realize an opportunity that no one else in the company is equipped to realize. Those are the two common reasons companies hire product people. Did you know that? We got a big problem we need you to solve, or we have an incredible opportunity that we need you to realize. And so the more your answer about, so why did you leave that company? Why did you decide that was the time to make a move? The more you can wrap and communicate that story around that experience, the more likely your future employer, should it convert to that, is going to feel good that you're likely to see things through with them, even when things get tough, because they're going to be. Guess what? It's hard everywhere. It's hard everywhere. No matter what company you look at on LinkedIn, no matter if you sort of take a look at five individuals in LinkedIn working for the same company, and you go on the back end of LinkedIn, which you might not have access to, but you take a look at that hidden open to work button, if it's enabled, you're going to see people at every company who have that button enabled. One candidate might say, this is a great place to be. I'm not going anywhere. We're doing hard things and we're building things, and I'm really excited for the future. And someone else you might talk to with that button enabled might say, yeah, you know what? We're doing really hard things and it's really hard in here. And I'm not sure we're going to make it. And another person might have that button enabled and say, you know what? I'm not planning on going anywhere, but I just want to see what my market worth is. So I'm always willing to take a call. I'll always have a coffee chat. Those are the three different scenarios you're going to find in almost every company who has a team of multiple PMs. And so knowing that it's hard everywhere, you want to definitely have that narrative buttoned up on why you chose to make a move if you were employed, and then you take that step.
I'm curious though, do you feel like it takes a while to learn that it's hard everywhere?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I feel like it took me a while to
Yes.
learn that.
Yes. And it's true in all facets of our life. I mean, how many times, not that I want to go down this path, but how many times, we're in a relationship and we think this is the one. Right?
So true.
So let's change that topic. But if we also think about just the time that we are in. So the time that we are in today, so this is early part of 2025. And there's a large community of individuals who got into product during a time of prosperity. And the difficulty or the tough time was a blink of an eye in the first 4 months of COVID, when everyone was just trying to, get their bearings straight on what was going on. And then boom, the industry had, record-breaking, year and a half, almost 2 years. Okay. Where money was flowing, salaries had never been higher. Everyone was hiring based on futures. Crazy times. Okay. And then November 2022. So we're just now coming out of that, and people are beginning to realize that, tough times are here for a while. We've got to be prepared for that. And so, yes, you're not alone to realize that it's hard everywhere. And PMs get hired. Opportunities exist when there are hard times and money to hire.
Makes sense. So I feel like, you're at a company, something else looks prettier and the grass looks greener, and then you're ready to jump ship, and then you realize, oh, it's hard here too. And I feel like it takes until you get into your 30s or even late 20s and you realize, oh, you just have to be excited about what you're doing, or realize a job is a job and it's not your whole life. And so you have to be find passion or excitement in what you're doing in some way, because it's work. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like it takes a while for you to realize you don't have to be passionate about every second of every moment that you're at work. And I feel like there's this narrative sometimes out there that's if you're not passionate about every second of every day at work, then you need to find something else. And so that can make everything look like the grass is greener. And it's not. It's work.
Yeah, 100%. I was chatting with a friend who was mulling over a move to a different company, higher title, things like that. But I challenged a little bit to look at it from the other side. And I was like, okay, so that's great and all, but do a pre-mortem on this. What happens if you accept this and things don't go well, right? Because we know, like we said, there's hard everywhere. It just looks different depending on the context, the company, the industry, etc. But there's hard everywhere. So do a little pre-mortem and be like, what would happen if I accept this and things go way down south? Determine your level of risk that you're willing to take for that, because sometimes we do take risks in our career and sometimes they do pay off. I'm not going to discredit that by all means. That's quite truly how I actually got into tech myself. I took a big risk. But once you're kind of in here and you get a lay of the land a little bit and you see what's going on, risk will look a little different to you depending on where you're at in life, where you're at in your career, and what you're looking for. And I think that we touched on a conversation here today that is harder to have. It can be hard to hear these things and talk about these things, but I'm so grateful we did, because we're shedding that light and we're just saying, like, hope is not lost by all means. You just need to know what your level of hard is that you can handle and how you want to proceed. This has just been so insightful. I'm soaking all this up.
The other piece to this is that if we think about hard, so think about an interview process and an interview flow. Okay. So it's normal that everyone is the best version of themselves in those conversations, right? As a candidate, you're all the things. Like you are, that case study, it's going to be perfect when you present that. And you're researching how to interview. And I mean, that even that has become, books have been written now about how to interview for certain companies, and there's services that train you on how to nail certain interviews at certain companies. So there's this entire system that is set up that's not even your authentic self necessarily going into a process. Then you've got an employer who might meet you, hear about you, and think, wow, we have the chance to get this person. They're actually interested and they are in sales mode, right? They are full on trying to attract you to join. And so it's in this scenario that people say yes. And now I don't share this to suggest that all of a sudden, people are joining companies and it's all wrong and it's, people are there for the wrong reasons. But you can imagine that if someone doesn't have a discerning lens on how they're feeling versus what they're experiencing, and pragmatically looking at likelihood of success if I say yes to this job, people could end up in some really challenging situations, right? And it is not uncommon for someone to say yes to an opportunity just for the money. I mean, my experience as a career recruiter, meeting people who have said yes to the money, there are many people who say, you know what, I made a decision for the money, but I'm not happy.
I've done that.
Yeah. And you're not alone. And what a beautiful thing to have learned and discovered for yourself that you're not solely money motivated. You've unlocked that insight now. And, I boil it down to two things. When you're a candidate and you're looking at opportunities, you want to ask yourself two hard questions. Both need to be a yes. The first question is, do I want to do that job? Like, what is the actual job I would be doing every day for 12 to 14 hours a day, maybe having to travel to be able to do that job? So now I'm traveling across time zones, away from my family, my friends, my community, all the things that are important to me. Do I want to do that? Do I want to work in the way that they have their time zones set up? Or do I want to go into an office as many times as they want me to? Whatever it is, do I want to do that job? That needs to be a yes, because that is actually what you're left with when all things go crazy. The next question is, can I work with those people? Do I want to work with those people? Is there alignment? When I look that person across the table, do I trust them? Do I believe them? Is their personality such that I could work with that person? I may not like them, but I've worked with this persona before, and I know how this is going to go. Okay? The answers to those two questions need to be a yes. If one of those questions is a no, end the interview process. Don't continue. Because that's what you're stuck with, those people and that job. And those two things will infuse and seep into your personal life. And that's a big deal. Yeah, that's a really big
100%.
deal.
It is. This was ages ago, but I remember I was in an interview process for a company, and so a recruiter reached out, and I was like, okay, yeah, okay, let me just take a look. We'll have the preliminary chat and all that jazz. And they were great. They were doing their job very, very well. But after the first interview with one of the hiring managers, I kindly but politely withdrew. I was like, nope. Because to that first question you asked, Heidi, do I actually want to do this job? I looked at a multitude of things, and I was like, no, I don't. And I sat with that. And I trusted my gut on that to be like, no, I actually don't want to do this. I think as we grow in our careers, there's more of a level of self-awareness that comes in what actually drives us
Yeah.
and what we want to do. So again, I'm not saying to people, don't like explore different industries or different roles, but just do it with the transparency with yourself. If you actually want to do that, if you think you would enjoy doing it, like you said, every day, every week, every month, like that's huge.
Yeah.
And I think we should not ignore the signs that our brains, body, whatever tell us if we
Yeah.
get kind of those heebie jeebies about a potential opportunity.
Now the flip side of the coin to this is, let's think about the person who's not as fortunate to have choice on whether they stay or go or whatever, because you know what, maybe they're not working. Maybe they're one of those individuals who has really been struggling
Yeah.
in an opportunity, and they haven't worked in 6 months, because this is happening. This is real for a lot of people. And I think we have to acknowledge that and talk about decision making in that scenario. Okay. And then I want to put a marker on the board that I think we should also talk about the person who is trying to transition into product and how that fits into this equation. But let's talk about first the person who's not working, who is not in the fortunate position of choice. Okay. Knowing the reason why you say yes to an opportunity is so liberating, because it is still very much an employer's market today. Okay. With some exceptions, and the exceptions are attached to organizations who are in very complex, highly products that require real domain expertise, and where those communities of people, the talent is scarce. So that's that. But broadly speaking, it is still an employer's market. Competition is brutal for jobs. And so if you are finally in a situation where you are in an interview flow and you think, oh my goodness, I might actually get a job out of this and then I can pay my bills, you might need to say yes to less than ideal situations, because we cannot lose sight of the fact that you have to feed yourself, have housing, your basic needs need to be met. But when you say yes to an opportunity, knowing that I'm saying yes because I need an income, and now I'm contributing to something. Now I have the opportunity to work on something, build. I'm going to possibly feel better about myself. Okay, confidence will begin to rise. We're contributing. And then while I'm working on that, it doesn't change the fact that I'm still going to apply. I'm still going to be a product person to whatever that job is that I've said yes to. And I'm going to apply product thinking. I'm going to be that person who raises their hand to do hard things and to contribute. And I'm going to invest in whatever that thing is that I have been chosen and selected to do, that I said yes to. And once I've done a good job and I've got an internal champion and I've got an internal advocate, I'm going to share my dream about my career with that person when we have a coffee on a Friday afternoon in the kitchen, or when we have our connection every 3 weeks. I'm going to share my dream about what I aspire to do in my career one day. And one day I'm going to ask that person, hey, would you be my champion? and help me navigate my career in this organization, since I've added such value in this area that I've been hired to work on and solve problems in.
Yeah.
So knowing why you say yes is really liberating, because it's not forever. The average tenure of a PM in tech is about 2 years, 2 months, 2 years, 3 months, which means that some people are leaving earlier, some people are staying longer. All right. And so it's okay to join a company knowing that it's not forever. This is going to be for an isolated period of time. And once I'm working, I'm greater likelihood I'm going to have some inbounds come to me as the market corrects, because people psychologically want people who are working. Okay. And that's when you can very carefully take phone calls once you have achieved the thing that you were hired to do, because that is always important. You want to be able to say, I said yes to that opportunity because I knew that I could do the very thing that they needed someone to do. And even though it wasn't the ideal scenario, and even though, it wasn't quite at the level that my experience, was at, I knew I could solve those problems. And so I said yes to that.
Yeah, that is,
I
I
love
just
that.
could not love and agree with that more, because I think we touched on so many good things in that. One, that yes, sometimes people do have to say yes because we, as humans, we have needs, right? We have things that we need to do to cover our needs. Fully support and agree with that. And I think it's so good that we touch on that, because like you said, it might not be ideal, but I love that you touched on also you can make the most of that situation. This is actually advice I give people that reach out to me for mentorship. And this will segue into probably our final question, but they come to me and they say, I'm in this role and I want to get to this role. So applying the product thinking to what they're doing today is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, like you said, that can be packaged up really well and will help them to their next opportunity. Meg, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but that just really stood out to me.
No, it stands out as well. And I am curious, like you were saying, if we could apply that at all to people who want to pivot into product.
Yeah.
Because I am curious what your thoughts are on that, because I know we only have a little bit of time left.
Yeah. Well, the good news about product careers is that most people don't start their career in product. It's a journey into product. Very, very, very infrequently do I meet someone who after university, boom, their first job is a product career. No, it's usually their first job is engineering or customer success or marketing or sales or whatever. And then there is a journey into product. So it's wonderful that the industry and the function is such that most people have not started at the same place. It attracts and invites almost anyone to get into it. Now, if we think about a career of pivoting into product, the pivot comes from, well, you're working for an organization in any way that you can add value. And then you are seeking to pivot within that context into a product career versus feeling frustrated that I'm looking for I'm looking for a product role. I've never been in product before, but this is a 0 to 1 situation. You're not in product. You're trying to move into product, true 0 to 1. You don't know anything about those businesses. You don't know anything they don't know you at all. That's a real 0 to 1 build of a career. The pivot is where it is likely to happen. So the scenario is find a company who will hire you where you can add value. That's step one. Isn't that what you want, to add value to a business? Absolutely. And if the business is a native tech company where they have product people, that's the ideal scenario. So if they say, well, we won't hire you as a product person, but we'll hire you as a customer success person, amazing. It's an opportunity. Get in there, do an incredible job, learn software, learn the tech industry, learn what ARR is, learn what churn is, and be the best person that you can be in that function. And then build your champions, meet people, because that's a native digital business. It's only a matter of time before they're going to unlock budget to hire another product person. Think about the value that you would bring to that business because you already know the product, you know their customers, you've been at all their town hall meetings. It would be quite compelling for them to offer an internal promotion because, or, a lateral move, depending on how they see it, from your role into a product role, because all HR organizations want to be able to boast about the people who they promote or move internally into positions. That's, that part of the house wants to be able to do that. Give them a reason to do that. Be that person. Okay. Because that is more likely the path of a pivot than what you think is a pivot, which is, now that I'm not working, I'm going to try to live my dream and get a product job. I've never been a PM. That's really tough. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's less likely to happen, especially in a market like the one that we're in, which is still an employer's market. And we are not in a season of scarcity. Scarcity means there aren't a lot of available product managers. And so you look pretty good because there isn't anybody else. Today, there is talent either in the market or ready to make a move because they've done the thing they were hired to do. And now they're looking for the next thing. Okay, that's the passive person. And so anyways, that's my thought on pivot. Pivots are powerful, but it starts with doing a great job in whatever function you're hired in. And then building relationships with your upline, with your stakeholders, volunteering for initiatives, asking for more work, asking to take on something really tough that no one's been able to do. Take a crack at it, see what you can do.
Totally. I mean, we both did that. Santi and I both did that. And we've heard so many success stories that are just that. So I think that the hard thing that I think that a lot of people don't want to accept is that it takes time. Everybody just wants the instant gratification, or people that we talk to, everybody, again, is the wrong term. People want the instant gratification of the product manager role, but it's a long game. It takes time. So I'm glad to hear from a recruiter's perspective that your opinion is that, like, build yourself up, take the time to get that role that you're fit for, do a really good job, build the relationships, and work your way in. Because that's what we did. And I think that that's what the advice that we give as well. It's just, I think it's hard for people on the other side to accept because they want that role and they want that role now.
So true. And the same applies to people who want progression to leadership, right? Almost every week, one or two people will email me saying, I'm either a senior IC, okay, and I'm ready to be a director now. I'm ready. or the director saying, Heidi, I've been a director now for 14 months and I'm ready to get your calls about VP opportunities every week. And that's great that someone is so confident that they are ready. But it takes more than feeling and thinking that you're ready. It's actually being the person who has outgrown the role and has developed, based on real world experience, skills that can only be learned through doing the work. And that ultimately makes someone ready and more likely to be successful, because don't you want to be successful if you're finally selected for that next level of role? You need to be successful. Do you want to be the person who was hired as a VP, never having been a VP, never having had that scope of responsibility, and then you don't hit it home? You're not successful. You might have the title, but you don't have the narrative.
That's rough.
That's tough.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
So just want to make sure, Heidi, if there's anything else that you want to cover in this 1 minute that you could time.
Well, we've covered a lot. Maybe we'll save that for the next podcast.
Cool. I'm so thankful that you had time to come on, Heidi. This has been awesome. I think we've been soaking it up, so we've been kind of quiet. But Santi, anything else?
No, this was amazing. You shed so many insights into this world and into this space. I know our listeners are going to love it and they're going to soak it up. So thank you again just for coming on and just being so transparent and giving so much of that good information that our listeners are desiring. We are beyond grateful for that.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah.